So welcome. We have a great opportunity today to go through some of the key questions that I keep hearing from so many members in our community and people I get to speak to about the framework, about the different aspects of the work that we get to do. I've flown over for a couple of days to do some work with the team, and I have Ashkan here today. So we are going to go through some of those key elements in this conversation. Let's start in the question of, well, some people might have heard different aspects of this, but what caused you to create this framework? Where did it all start?
One of the greatest vulnerabilities of all for us human beings is not knowing, confusion. Yeah. So there are so many different questions that we have never found answers to. And perhaps for some of them, we will never know. Yeah. So for example, where did we come from? Where we're going to go after life? Is there an afterlife or not? There are certain metaphysical questions that it's very likely that we're not going to find purely rational answers to. Yeah. Even science, which is this epistemological approach that we found to be relatively reliable in explaining the material world, nature, has limitations to it. You cannot provide all the answers possible. Now, when I talked about like these very philosophical questions, afterlife or where we did come from, but not necessarily we need to even go there. We have more tangible questions that we need to answer when we're living our lives. For example, like if you're sitting at home on your sofa and you're seeing whether or not you should eat these potato chips. And yes, there are certain scientific information available at the back of the chips. But then, in order for you to make a decision whether you want to have it or not tonight, that's not the only thing that you want to look into. Yeah, so it's not a purely scientific question. You need to go back. You need to look into your value structure. What you value the most, is that your health or the joy of having that chips at night, or for example, even if you care so much about your health, um, is taking like 2-3 chips is going to really make a huge difference to your health or not? Yeah, how obsessed you should be with that, or questions like, can you trust what's being said at the back of the chips? Yeah. So as you can see, a simple question of whether you should have potato chips tonight or not, it goes way beyond purely scientific problem. Yeah. So when it comes to us human beings, when we try to understand ourselves, there's lots of ambiguities. There's lots of confusion. There's whole literature around psychology, let's say, or philosophy, trying to help us understand human being better. Um, and and while in certain cases you can see that we've been quite effective in reading human being, in other cases we're not. Yeah, and we have to understand human being. We have to read human being. Life demands that from us. Imagine the most critical decisions that you're going to make in your life has something to do with some human beings. Yeah? You want to choose a spouse. You want to choose a business partner. You want to see if you should work with this investor in your organization or not, having them bring them on board or not. You want to choose the next CEO or the managing director on the board. You want to hire this person or fire that person. You want to decide whether this person should be promoted within the organization or not, and so on. Most of these key decisions we're going to make in life involve some sort of human being. Yeah. And most importantly, you accessing yourself as a human being. Like we want to understand ourselves better. understanding who we are, how we are being, um, are our existing characteristics serving us or not? Um, so therefore, like there's this massive level of uh, um, unknown when it comes to human being, um, and I call it the invisible. So there's this the invisible that, as the name suggests, it's not apparent, it's not readily available. We see the surface, we see the behaviors of people, and we find ourselves constantly decoding the intentions of the people that we're interacting with. For example, like you're going to ask this question: is this person who is um, conveying or who is saying that they love us, does this person really uh,
Mean
love?
it.
Yeah, the serious with what they're saying or not? Should you trust this person or not? If when it comes to the election in democratic society, then you want to see, should you trust this person and then vote for them, elect the leader, subscribe to their plan or not, etc., etc. So therefore, there is this unknown, there is this the invisible when it comes to human being, as it is like around other things. And when it comes to the material world, like we can, in a great extent, to the great extent, we can rely on science. When it comes to human being, it gets way more complex and sophisticated, because you cannot purely study human being through a purely scientific way. Hence psychology is not an exact science in its great part. So in order for us to have a better understanding of human being when it comes to the scope of performance, leadership, effectiveness, then I knew that there is this missing. We need to work on some sort of framework so that we can guide people where to look at and how to look at the howness of human beings, how they are being.
Well, I studied psychology, and I know the efforts there's behind this, trying to uncover this invisible. From what was already available in the research or the market, what was it that you saw was missing that led you to create a new framework?
Well, I mean, there's so many missings out there, but in order for a person to say that something was clearly missing, like you need to really deeply understand the whole literature, which is impossible. So you cannot go and then understand all there is and then clearly say that there's this clear things missing. But as far as I'm concerned, with the studies that I have done, and the practical use, the practicality element to it. See, in the beginning, if you're talking about being profile, specifically our ontometric tool, assessment tool, um, the thing was the ethos of Genesis was entrepreneurship. We are venture builders at the core. We want to see more entrepreneur. We invest in businesses. We want to see more and more teams find entrepreneurship as this uniquely positioned vehicle to solve human being problems. Yeah, and as we were trying to have like to meet people, these teams all around the world in many different countries, like our team, like working with all these startups, entrepreneurs, self-claimed entrepreneurs, that they really wanted to solve some human being problem. Then we needed to know how committed they are. See, as an investor, you are in a very vulnerable position, especially if you're an angel investor, if you're investing in startups at a very early stages. You are in a very vulnerable position.
Well, and many of the people listening might be in that position. right now that they are at the start of their businesses or they're running their own venture and looking to make it succeed. So it applies
so it should
to
resonate. Yeah, sure. Yeah. So you are in a very, very vulnerable position. First of all, for you to be an investor, you should have earned money. Yeah, you should have earned monetary capital so that then you can invest. And often, by the time that you are in a position to be able to spend, you're a mid-age person. Yeah. Now, in my case, it's a little bit, kind of exceptional. I'm not. I'm 35 years old at the moment, and I started from 30 when I was 30, close to 30, in actively investing. But most of the investors are people that they get to their mid-age so that they can invest. And you don't necessarily have a very long career if you're a professional investor, particularly when it comes to entrepreneurship, because in average, it would take close to 7 years for a startup to turn to a full-fledged business, you could say. Yeah. Now, so therefore, you need to choose your horse quite wisely. You can't just jump in and then invest in all these different businesses and gamble. Yeah. And the thing is, like, lots of investors out there, they actually relate to investment in businesses or in the startups as a gamble. Like, there are lots of statistics, like we can go into the conversation of the VCs, venture capitals, hedge funds, and etc. etc. Yeah, so let's not go there. The conversation here is like, as an investor, you are in a very vulnerable position. You're investing your money, your capital, and the rest almost is fully dependent on how these entrepreneurs, how the co-founding team and the rest of the people that are going to be to get on board are going to perform. So you need to rely on their commitment. See, if the moment that they stop, it's not like you have borrowed, you have lent money to them for interest. That's not the game.
Gonna work.
You have shares or stake in that business, and if they don't operate, if they don't lift the business up, then you're in total loss. Yeah. So now I just created a context to say that there was this massive practical element to the creation of the being profile, which in the beginning was, that was not the plan to commercialize it, to give access to other people. It was more a kind of internal project for us to actually use, for ourselves to try to understand human being better. Not necessarily through the tools, first from looking into the ontological model, basically the list of these qualities, 31 qualities, which in the beginning was not 31, it was less, but these 31 qualities, so that we know where to look at. Now, how to measure it more accurately, that was another conversation, and then the tool is going to help us. We can talk about that. But the point is, we wanted to look into the commitment. You wanted to look into how these individuals would relate to commitment. If they give you promise, they're going to fulfill that promise, or they're going to drop it in the middle of the way. We wanted to see how authentic they are, in a sense that, like, are their conceptions of different parts of reality congruent? Because as an entrepreneur, for example, you need to be a multidisciplinary person. You need to understand commercial law to a degree. You need to understand, like, the things around compliance and the legal obligations you have. You need to understand what is commonly known as HR, or like human resources, as they say. I would say people and culture. You need to understand human being quite well. You need to have a basic understanding of accounting, how to do financial projections, engineering, product development, marketing, and influencing the perceived value of your offering. So there's so many things going on there, and being extremely good at effective at communication, being able to generate authentic brand and communicate that, and then generate trust, So there's so many things that you as an entrepreneur need to do. And then if I want to zoom out a little bit more, not only entrepreneurs, but whoever is going to be a leader, whether a leader of their own life or being a leader of an organization, a team, a community. So we gradually learned that there's this thing, we call it integrity, yeah, being whole, complete, undivided, um, meaning that like you have your constituent parts of a system working in an optimum level, contributing into the integrity of the overall system. So all these, let's say for the sake of argument, because there's lots of nuance there, but it's like one's being, how they relate to and act upon their perceptions of responsibility, authenticity, courage, um, assertiveness, compassion, forgiveness, and so on. It really matters. Yeah. So, and in all of these qualities, how these individual would relate to these different qualities, at the end of the day, contribute to their overall integrity as a person, as a leader, as an entrepreneur, or it compromises, deprave it. Yeah. So yeah. So going back to the question you're asking, um, the thing was we needed to understand a person. We wanted to know how they relate to commitment, responsibility. Are they an active agent in their life? Uh, would they do whatever it takes to steer the direction when lots of unexpected problems are going to come at them as entrepreneur? For example, you need that. Are they able to forgive, not in a kind of an altruistic way, um, but like are because they're going to make mistakes.
And the people around them are going to make mistakes.
Exactly. Like all of these people that you have around you are going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. Are you a kind of a person? Have you developed yourself? Have you polished yourself enough so that you can forgive and then move on, or you're going to be sitting there resentful and be in grief of whatever was going on. Yeah. So basically, in order for you to be this leader, or in that case, like entrepreneur, um, I gradually realized that there are these patterns that work and patterns that they don't work. Now, obviously, we use some of the existing models of reading human being. Let's say, for example, psychoanalysis. Mm. But in order for you to go through like 30 sessions throughout like 2 years or something like that, working with people to psychoanalytically understand them. I mean, first of all, that's not feasible. We cannot get a person to go through 30 sessions of psychoanalysis
before you decide to start working with them.
So it's not like psychoanalysis is not effective, or to what extent it's effective or not. It was more like it was not fitting into the type of work we wanted to do. So we need to have an understanding of people, a more in-depth understanding of people, under certain circumstances, which is practical in our day-to-day work. As an employer, for example, you cannot get people to go through psychoanalytical sessions to work with them or to support them grow. Like you can't do that ethically. Yeah. Mm. Now, and there were other like psychometric tools, as they call it, which they mainly categorize people. Yes. Yeah. So, for example, you have this type of personality. You have this other type of personality. They tap into personality type theory, which fundamentally, like that was not something that it was matching the underpinning philosophy that we have. And I think most people, most of these organizations, they are coming to this point that just categorizing people is not the answer. Yeah. But it's still like many of these tools that go, okay, so you are an introverted person, hence dot 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 dot. They give you certain advices, tips, and tricks, and you are an extroverted person, and then these are the things. Fundamentally, philosophically, I didn't find human being to be fixated, being fixed object, so that we can easily categorize. Now we do that as human beings. the way that our brain works. So you know it, like as a psychologist. So the thing is, you know that we categorize things in order for us to simplify our understanding of them. But that was not giving us, at the end of the day, that categorization was not giving us the confidence that to invest millions of dollars in a business, in working with people. We want a genuine understand. And I'm not saying that through the being profile, for example, we just get them to complete the profile and then we go, okay, good, fantastic, like let's go and invest in them. No, the idea is like where to look at and how to read that and how to transparently have those conversations with them. Yeah, so it gives us that kind of more visibility in a more transparent way. It's not going to be 100%, like it's not like, but in comparison with just categorizing people, or trying to understand them, some of their traits, like personality traits, as some other tools would do. Let's say, for example, um, 5 big traits.
Yeah.
The the as they call it personality test, but I would be more accurate perhaps. I'll go temperament test. So there are certain questions because it's open source, so everyone can use it, and we spend a tremendous amount of time on it. While it's quite credible, and lots of actually psychologists may use it, or organizations, and the thing is like to ask people questions like there are questions like, I make friends quickly. I mean, so what that does that supposed to tell us really about you, or whether you like or not, you like children or not. I mean, you know what I mean. So these the questions are quite vague, and we have tested it a lot. Like, for example, like in the test that I've done myself, because you can easily do it, it's open source. I came out to be amongst the 98% people, top 98% of people who are overly agreeable, which I think that anyone who would know me, like, they know that that's not the case, and that's not my self-image as well. So basically, and then there are other tools that, as you know, they focus more on behavior, yeah. They try to create a cognitive model of your behaviors. The problem with that is not that like observing or understanding human behavior is not effective in a way, or it's not good. The thing is how many behaviors you're manifesting on a daily basis. So there's so many behaviors being manifested by you. You take so many different actions per day. So in order for us to go and in a micro level and try to understand every single behavior you're manifesting in the world and the impact of those behaviors, it's literally not feasible. Yeah.
Yes, and I listen to you, and I'm thinking, well, there is so many of these different paradigms or methods that you can tap into. How did you bring it all together in terms of the people that will be watching this, mainly practitioners or people that might be using it with their teams, their organizations? How did you bring it all together in a way that was practical, as you said?
Yeah. So so let me actually continue that behavior, measuring behavior, and then we'll lead to into this. So and then this approach, in psychology, like behavioralism, to focus on behavior, and then we basically say that like due to conditioning, repetition and creating habits and everything, then you're going to behave in certain manner, and then let's go and then identify those behaviors that are not working and then address them, and then you're going to become a better person. The issue, as I said, was like, this is a kind of a very micro level interference. So it's like how many of these behaviors you actually want to measure, and identify. And so to me was like the behaviors are like the branches and the leaves on a tree. So if you're seeing that this tree is not coming to fruition, if like there's some disease or something going on, very likely you're not going to go and then address all these like leaves of the tree individually. What you're going to do, you're going to first look into the substrate. You're going to look into the soil, and then see like if the soil is healthy and everything, and then you're going to go and then address things from roots up. Yeah. So now, as I say, like I don't say like all of these existing approaches were out of merit. No, they all provide something. Yeah. And as you know, like I've tried to leverage from like the existing knowledge. Like it's not like we're just coming up and saying that, for example, behavior is not important, or cognitive model is not important, or we should ditch them, or something like that. But yeah, so basically looking into what works and what doesn't work with the existing literature, existing tools, etc. Then we gradually, the team and we came to this conclusion that, okay, so let's create this ontological model. Now, for those of you that you may not know what ontological models are, so we don't want to go to the depth of it, but the name is fancy. But the idea is quite simple. Like you have this part of reality, whatever that's going to be, and then you try to map that reality in a kind of a engineering model. Yeah. So like ontological model is a term that is being used in analytical thinking, in engineering, in computer science. So you go to this organization as a programmer, as an analyst, and like they have an e-commerce store. You want to create a model of basically what sort of entities are there, and then how these entities conceptually interact with each other. Yeah. So you can create this model, and so that like you study the whatness of something. Yeah. So for example, you go to this e-commerce store company, and you know that they have customers, they have orders, they have products, and then there's some relationships between them. And then like each of these entities, they have their own properties, attributes, or characteristics. Yeah. For example, like a product would have a price, name, category, etc., or a customer would have name, first name, last name, date of birth, etc., etc. Now, I don't want to make it so simplistic as well. Like lots of technical people would be out there and then go, oh no, that's domain model, that's like conceptual model, that's this and that. We don't want to go that technical. Yeah. At the end of the day, like this ontological model we're talking about is a series of qualities that we all human beings relate to in one way or another. Yeah, we relate to them differently. So let's say we relate to responsibility differently or commitment differently, but we all relate to it, to these qualities. Yeah, so no human being can say that, oh, I don't relate to fear at all, in no ways. Like,
well, in the practicality of it, we might not be present to all of these distinctions that you're touching on, but they're there. Once we see them, once we articulate them, we know we have a relationship with them.
Yeah.
And the framework in the way is, I see that what it brings is that those concepts, those distinctions that are there, but sometimes we aren't present to, so we don't tap into them.
Yes, that's also correct. Yeah. So yeah, so we have the ontological model, series of qualities. So they are categorized in 4 different categories in that construct, so that they act as a map of like what a human being is in certain scope, like in the scope of performance, how we operate. Yeah. So now, and then the being profile, as you know, then measures our relationship, or how we relate to and act upon perhaps these qualities through the 244 questions that we have in it. Yeah.
So let's go into you just said the measurement, yes, of the tool. How did you create that measurement, and how could you say it was created so it's valid, the validity of it?
Yeah. So then let me zoom out and then give a little bit more. Yeah. So then connect these two questions you had together. So the thing was like what was missing. So a big part that was missing was um, some would categorize people, put you in a category, and then they go, okay, so these category of people would behave this way, and then some would focus purely on the behaviors on the surface. This it's good, but then as we said, like it's like in a micro level, then there's so many behaviors and everything, and then no one actually wants their behaviors, individualistic behaviors, being fixed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So even if you identify that, then you know how you're going to work with a person. You want to get their behaviors fixed. I mean, that's the kind of thing most people are uncomfortable with. So, and then some others like psychoanalytical models or approaches, then they need to go so in depth, and then in order for you to work with the psychoanalyst, like psychoanalyst is this person who's well trained for years, and then you need to spend so much time. So basically, the time factor wouldn't work, and it doesn't fit into your day-to-day understanding of people, etc., etc. So the missing was some framework that it can provide, a library of content, a series of tools, including the measurement tool, and there are other tools of use, as you know, and series of principles, so that like we direct people who choose to adopt it, so that they can read themselves and other people better. We provide all these things to them so that in a more methodical way, they can understand people, but not too methodical that then it turns into a kind of scientific experiment. Like you take people and then you try to read them so scientifically. So therefore, and it's a framework, and by that, like by the nature of a framework, it's an incomplete set of all of these things that I've mentioned. So it's expandable. Yes. We can expand it and we can contextualize it, and that's what that we're doing with some good number of our community, contextualizing the framework in multiple different dimensions of our life.
Yeah, and that we do every time we have a conversation with someone around these aspects.
Yes. Now, going to your question regarding the measurement, so it was like how we measure it.
How do you measure it, and how did you come to measuring these different aspects?
So first we need to again zoom out and then go like how these qualities are chosen, because there is a big list of many qualities. So the first thing was like we came up with a very big number of qualities, with the team, and then tapping into analytical thinking, so divergent thinking, convergent thinking, meaning that, for example, like when you're creating a model, and then you want to see maybe two separate quality that you have worked out, that perhaps one thing, so you need to convert them, you need to merge them, and sometimes some of these qualities that you may are interested to work on, then it's just one thing, but it's too broad and too vague, so you need to split them into more specific, more tangible, communicable qualities. So a kind of practice of this kind has been done, so that then we limit the number of these qualities in such a way that they are comprehensive enough. Now, so these qualities, some, as we were trying to put them there, so I started looking into this, what I call highest achievers, mostly entrepreneurs, but we have people that they're not even entrepreneurs at all. Like, for example, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, so a novelist. The people that they have managed to fulfill their intentions despite all these things that life brought to them. So, for example, Gabriel Garcia Marquez has gone through so many hardships in life, yet he managed to not only be a novelist, but also created a new genre of um, novel writing.
Yes.
Yeah, magic real. So, um, when I started looking into the interviews available with these highest achievers, as I call them, I've tried to, in a qualitative manner, because this is not something you can jump into it and like a kind of a traditional approach to science, if being a pure positivist, like trying to, like through exact science, you want to work it out. At the end of the day, it's like these are like qualities. You can't take a quantitative approach purely. So, so we needed to work out like what qualities matter the most, and that's basically, yeah, so the model can be to a degree biased, because at the end of the day, I, as the researcher or the the person in who is doing these observations and deciding, so that has to do with any qualitative research basically there. Yeah. So, and we've been quite transparent about that. Like that's basically how I, as a philosopher, as a thinker, as an engineer in this case, that was my understanding of what qualities matter. And now it was not just like picking them on the fly. Obviously, there's a tremendous amount of work have been done, like hours of these interviews being studied. Um, Interviews with Jeff Bezos, interviews with like Elon Musk, and I never looked into it from the viewpoint of benevolence. For example, like, do I agree that their intentions are going to be beneficial to the world or not? Yeah, I looked into them from a more values-free, judgment-free, non-judgmental approach, trying to see, okay, so this person had this intention, they managed to fulfill it. Yeah. Now, some people may not be happy with that intention. That's another conversation we're having here. Yeah. So the thing is, yeah. So then I went through all of these hours of watching these videos, interviews, and trying to identify the patterns that, in great part, they have in common. For example, like let's say with responsibility. Yeah. So with responsibility, as you know, like I don't mean duty, obligation, or something like that. I'm referring to this quality of being responsible, being able to respond to the matters that life brings to you. So if you look into any of these highest achievers, as I call them, you see that they are the ones that they don't let the circumstances to crush them in most part. Yeah. It's not the circumstances that is going to determine their ultimate result. They are the ones who do whatever it takes. Yeah, they live life from this viewpoint that I need to go and then I need to find the tiniest thread of a string and pull it, even if I can steer the direction by 5% towards where my will or volition is, my intention is. So they're not this passive victim that life is occurring to them. There are these people that they go, no, wait a moment, I need to be in charge as much as possible. See, at the same time, there are not the people that they are control freaks. That's another shadow to healthy relationship with responsibility. So they're not like going, oh, I'm God and things should go, I'm the epicenter of the universe and everything should go my way. They so surrender to the path that they know that it's beyond their control. And this healthy relationship with responsibility is one of the many qualities that they have that I found that it's in common, without which you're just basically letting your life go based of luck or something like that,
And just with with this one, responsibility, there's so many nuances to it.
Oh, yeah.
So when you work with someone in the work I do and many of the practitioners do, when we're working with people, it's to be able to distinguish the nuances behind these distinctions, these qualities, and then to support them to understand what makes them effective.
Yeah.
And once you start seeing them, they can start articulating and working with it.
Yes, that's absolutely correct, and that's why that's part of the complexity of language, and
Yes.
also how to measure it. Because your question was more around measuring. I zoomed out because I thought that without giving a kind of a broader context, then the measurement conversation wouldn't fit.
Yes.
Yeah, and hopefully our audience are going to like follow the conversation and not take this measurement ability out of the context. Yeah, because some people they so love measurement, and some people just hate measurement, even in academia. Yeah? So yeah, long story short, like through qualitative studies, mainly focusing on the interviews, the videos that are available, because I didn't have access to all of these highest achievers, and then like interview them in a kind of a more methodical
way,
academic way.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, like even in academia, like it's quite acceptable to rely on videos and interviews that are already there, and then you can use them legitimately as the source of qualitative studies. Yeah.
Yes.
So then so I've tried to identify these patterns, and that was one part of it. But also there are cross-cultural studies. There's a massive literature behind it. For example, one of them is the virtue and the strength, strength of character, um, and you can see that there's certain qualities that are so glorified beyond cultures. For example, courage.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, whatever that's supposed to mean, like we will talk about that, because as we said, we don't relate to these qualities in the exact same way. Yeah. Different cultures, different schools of thought, different individuals may relate to these qualities quite differently. Yeah. Now, but yeah, so some of these qualities are quite glorified, even in different religions or people of faith. Yeah. So, for example, when we talk about forgiveness, when we talk about love, there are lots of Christians would so resonate with that. Yeah. Or so basically, these qualities they go beyond cultures and beyond religions. That's why I call them, most of them, primal qualities of human being. Yeah, some of them it would go beyond even just human beings. Like for example, freedom. Yeah, even a bird would have a sense of freedom. Like you cage a wild bird, and then you're going to see how they're going to behave. Or for example, fear. Even a rabbit being chased by a predator, by a fox, would experience fear, and that fear is to a great extent immeasurable, because it's going to impact her limbic system in her brain. The heartbeat is going to go higher. The pace of breathing is going to go high. Certain hormones are going to be released. So basically, this thing called fear and the experience of fear, it's something that not only us human beings would relate to. Yeah, so they're primal to us. So yeah, so going through that, like identifying which qualities are there. Obviously, we didn't want to end up with too many qualities, because what's the point? If you have too many areas that you need to look into, then it's not really a help. Yeah. But then so we limited the numbers to is
31.
31.
So we're still a lot there.
Yeah, it's still a lot there. Yeah. It's like awareness or intentional consciousness, and then 30 qualities that we go through. Yeah. So now, as for the measurement, the first challenge was for us to actually know create this agreement that what is it that we're measuring. Yeah. So when we say, oh, measuring your relationship with responsibility, like what does that supposed to mean? Yeah. So, and that's a limitation to language anyways, like that's a characteristics to I mean, this is a linguistic type of conversation, because see, we use words, and the words are tokens that they are encapsulating the complexities that needs to be communicated. For example, like when I use the word, I don't know, dog, yeah. So we have a mental image of dog because we've seen it out in the world, and what we're going to do, we're going to use this token to refer to that very real entity, creature out in the world.
Yes.
Now, in those cases, it's much easier because we say dog, and then everyone has some mental model of that. Sorry, so some mental image of that. Now, but when it comes to abstract ideas, then it's going to be way harder. Yeah, like for example, when I say love, how you're relating to love.
Oh,
Yeah?
it depends for each and every one of us.
Yeah, and then like, and then some people even categorize love. Like we have a romantic love, we have a mother or fatherly love, we have like a general love for humanity. I mean, some people even go and categorize. But the thing is, we relate to these qualities quite differently. Yeah. So I don't know what your perception of marriage is, or your perception of love is. Yeah. So, or now in our case, like responsibility, assertiveness. In some cultures, we found that being assertive is not necessarily even. It's not something acceptable. It's like being aggressive. Like it lands as if like we were saying, be aggressive and not be respectful.
Yeah, or disrespectful with authority. Or,
yes, exactly. So, so what we did was, well, okay, so let's create these distinctions. Yeah, for all of these 31 qualities, we created distinctions. Now, it's not they're not definitions; they're distinctions, and it's like we're not defining it. And we're saying that there is this quality uh, there that's real. Now we're choosing a word as a token to refer to that quality. Yeah. So basically, if someone is there and say, "Oh, but that's not my perception of responsibility. This is not how I see authenticity," I'll go, "Sure, okay. We're not making you wrong. We're saying that this is what we want to focus on. This is what we're communicating whenever we say authenticity or responsibility, and this is what we are trying to measure."
In a framework.
Yes. Yeah. So now, in this scope of effectiveness and leadership and performance, certain qualities are identified in a qualitative manner. Yeah, using mostly these interviews and then the information available around the decisions they have made, and then how those decisions led to fulfillment of certain intentions that they had. Also looking into the cross-cultural studies, and seeing that some of these qualities have been glorified and have been validated throughout history through different cultures and faith, and basically we landed with these X number of qualities. Then for each of these qualities, then I've studied the top. Many of them are academics and some not. For example, for self-expression, I've looked into this book by Oxford Press, which is called Self-Expression, and it's a whole book that the author goes through. What do we mean by, like, what is this thing called self-expression? For example, for forgiveness, there's this like paper that I've looked into. This person for years studied the science of forgiveness, like what is forgiveness, or others, or compassion.
I get there. You've tapped into the studies that other people have done to then bring together these distinctions.
Yes. So after identifying these qualities, then I've looked into what the experts in those fields would have to say, and then generated my interpretation of that, and then try to capture that in each of these distinctions that we have. Yeah. So that, like, in 3 paragraphs in each distinction, then we're saying, like, this is what we mean by this quality. Yeah. So yeah, and then for example, let's say qualities like responsibility, a big part was initiated when I started looking into these studies by Michael Jensen and Werner Erhard. Lots of people may know Werner Erhard, and it was released on SSRN. So Michael Jensen works with Harvard Business School.
Yeah.
And these guys, they wanted to see what sort of core qualities are quite important when it comes to leadership or effective exercise of leadership, how we can produce leaders. Yeah. And mainly they talked about integrity, talked about being primary cause of matters, which I call responsibility. They talk about being committed to something bigger than you. And as we talked about divergent thinking, I broke it down to higher purpose and commitment.
Okay.
And authenticity. Now, like they talk about authenticity in a certain way, being congruent with who you say you are for yourself and who you say you are for others, which then I expanded that. And when I talk about authenticity, as you know, it's a broader context. But so putting that aside is like, yeah, so there were existing studies, or even, for example, the term way of being that we use, I've borrowed from existing literature.
Yes.
Yeah. So because these qualities often are called like dispositions, like a kind of a technical term, that also often referred to as ways of being. But then I refer to all of them altogether, all of these 31 qualities. I say aspects of being. This is my being, and then these aspects of being. So yeah, so putting all these qualities together, creating distinctions, and that was a hell of a thing on itself. And unfortunately, I had a really good team at the time. Like we started putting these distinctions. These distinctions have been modified many times.
Yes.
To make them
I've
as
seen
accurate
it.
as possible. And you've been part of some
level of that, yes.
later stages of that.
So we've uncovered what the process was to get to these, then defining which these ways of being were, and then how to distinguish them, and then how to measure them.
So all of these qualities are there. The challenge was like to create the distinctions. We did the distinctions, and many times we refine the distinctions so that we get more and more accurate, and they are more congruent with what we actually intended to measure or understand. Then I had a beautiful opportunity to work with John Lowe, and you know John Lowe, and as a mathematician, and he's done like he's the person who's part of the first Swiss stock exchange design. He's he's really good with data models, trying measurement of things, and so we collaborated a lot, and then others obviously in the team, including people like John Smallwood, like a practical coach working actually with executives and everything. So we got coaches also involved, as you know, like the first cohort of coaches. So we built it with them as we were going. But anyway, so we came up with questions to measure each of these aspects of being or ways of being in the context of moods. Now it's going to go a little bit more technical, but so it's not just like one question for one quality of these 31, but there's a relationship between one question, one primary way of being, and then also one mood. So it's like, for example, responsibility is being measured through a certain number of questions in the context of vulnerability or fear or anxiety, if it makes sense. No, so that can go quite technical. Yeah. Yes. The thing is, so we basically came up with the first version of questions, trying to measure them, or we did a good number of with Excel sheet, like we started measuring, and then interviewing people. They answer the questions. We try to measure them like that, and then we have coaches, including John Lowe himself, and then others that they've been working with us to score people based on they ask the questions, and then they score people, and then we keep record of that, and then we came up with the first version of the being profile, and then we get the tool through the algorithm and come up with the number, and then we were matching if these experienced coaches who are quite familiar now with these distinctions would score that if the being profile and the algorithm would score close enough to the scores that, so basically, and then the being profile is not just a simple static algorithm, it's like learning. The model is constantly learning, but being profile algorithm is mimicking what an experienced coach would do, but in a shorter period of time, less error prone, less biased, and more objective. Yeah.
And where the person that is answering the questionnaire has a direct influence.
Of course. Yes. It applies to any questionnaire. At the end of the day, you are the one who's putting the input. But there are certain measures, like we have vulnerability score, let's say, that it can tell us if whether or not that person was trying to impress and portray a kind of a exaggerated persona. Yeah.
Even going through the questionnaire.
Yes. Yeah. So it's their authenticity of around answering the questions and everything. So and like that it's not a static questionnaire. It's like a kind of a more in-depth tool with lots of features underneath it. So basically, so we came up with the questions. We had the first couple of versions, scoring people based off their answers, then keep cross-checking that with real extremely experienced coaches that are familiar with the domain. And then we kept refining it. We did defactoring. We did lots of different, like, I don't want to go to the technical things, but basically, for example, like after having a good enough number of data before commercialization, we wanted to see, are they questions that everyone is answering in such a way that they get the score? Yeah. And technically speaking, you want to get rid of those or refine them to the point that not everyone is getting it right. You know what I mean? And things like that.
The desirable answer.
Yes. And like we went through rounds and rounds of refinements. The questions that have been articulated better. We had different people from different background, different orientations and different philosophical background and ethnicities to actually contribute, so that like the questions are not biased. And many things came up like as we were refining them, which was, I was so blind to them. Yeah. So so we did that many times, and then the latest part you've been involved yourself. The questions were refined many times. The distinctions were refined many times in the beginning, and then few times later on, to make it more accurate and communicable. And then now, from the time of commercialization, that we knew the tool is reliable enough. We were keep still refining it, but then we got to a point that calibration of the scores was so minor that there was no point keep recalibrating it. So because at the end of the day, it's not about like the exact number. We're not measuring someone's
blood test.
It's not like a blood test. It's not an exact science. It's a kind of an indication how you're relating to these aspects of being or responsibility, commitment, so that you identify the blind spots for yourself, and then you zoom out and then see, okay, so is the way that I'm relating to responsibility or commitment serving me or serving the intentions I want to fulfill or not? Yeah. So that's the thing. So I don't actually focus so much on the exact numbers at this stage. Is more like it's giving you a good indication whether or not like you're relating, the way that you're relating to these aspects of being are actually serving you or not. And if you find out that they're not necessarily serving you, then you can choose to do something about it, and that's a different conversation.
That's really great. And you just touched on something that I hear from our practitioners as a question also, that is it scientific?
Okay, so first of all, as we touched on it in the beginning, okay, so let me give you a straight answer first, a short answer. Yes, like the measurement part, it's scientific. Now, whether we do have an academic paper for it or no, we don't. I mean, we didn't do an academic, I'm not an academic person by nature, yeah, but not everything, every piece of knowledge should come from academia. I mean, that's
well, it doesn't.
Yeah, and it doesn't, because like I know that some people would like to think that academia should be the monopoly of having exclusive authority around production of knowledge, but like that's not from a philosophical perspective. I don't see it like that. And if you want to talk about academia, that will be a completely different conversation. I have quite well-formed views around that I don't think it's the time to go through. But the thing is, yeah, so the measurement, like the qualitative studies that I've done, I've tapped into methodical ways. I've got my research paradigm quite clear, and then I had a team working, and we will release some white papers to be even more transparent around them. And that's that's part of the plan.
Plans.
Yeah, but so basically, like, it is scientific if you tap into the more modern interpretation of science. See, psychology as a whole is not an exact science. If you're talking about science as exact science, that you put this input in and definitely you're going to get that output out of it. Yeah, it's not like those of physics that we're being so clear about their mathematical equations that they're giving us the right answer so that we can build a bridge. When it comes to human psyche, it's not like that. There's a massive level of subjectivity or intersubjectivity associated with these layers of reality we interact with. Yeah, it's not only, we're not dealing with material world. So there's lots of philosophical conversation we can have around it, the movement of philosophies as we go, the existentialists.
For that, we have all the books that are in the works.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you're tapping into a more modern interpretation of science, as we have it in human sciences or humanities, things like social science, as they call it, science, yeah. So then yes, so it is scientific. We are basically taking certain qualities through qualitative studies. Yeah, I am the researcher, quite in a transparent manner. I'm saying that it can be, as many all other studies in these fields are to a degree biased. At the end of the day, you, the researcher, you cannot separate yourself from the research.
Yes.
Yeah, so this is a kind of inauthenticity that lots of scientists may have. Yeah. They want to position science as this, even the modern science around human psyche, that it's so objective, and that's not my opinion. No, it is your opinion to a great degree, but then yeah, you're being rigorous with your methodical ways and everything, so that you actually find the evidences for the claims that you want to have. Now, so therefore, that's the qualitative part, and then when it comes to the measurement, so there are ways, there are methodical ways or technical ways that you come up with a questionnaire. Like we followed them, and we came up with a questionnaire. We're measuring things. When we find like the parts that we need to go and then see refine, and then we'll do it. But often, so when people say scientific, like they mean different things. Yeah.
Yes, and
so I don't know, but yes. So the short answer to that is, with the modern interpretation of science, it is scientific. Particularly, I'm talking about the model, the ontological model, and the being profile as the measurement tool.
Assessment.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, see, you talked about, you mentioned psychometric tool. This is the psyche of human being is so complex and so broad that no one should dare even to say that I have a tool that it can measure all of your psyche. No, this is not what we're doing. See, I don't want this to be taken more seriously than what it is. Yeah, the thing is, you have your cognitive model of how you're relating to so many different content in this world. Yeah, and we're saying that this ontological model is a very tiny part, but very important part. Yeah, significant, but very tiny part of all of your the totality of your cognitive model of what there is in the world. Yeah. So, but then we say that let's pay attention to these X number of qualities, and then see how you're relating to them, and then see if the way that you're relating to them is serving you or not, and or if the way that you're relating to them is congruent with the way that the highest achievers, the most effective, the effective people amongst us are relating to this. And then it's up to you if you want to transform or change the perception that you have, how you relate to them, and then act upon them. Now, the way that you relate to them and act upon them through your actions and behaviors are ultimately, in great part, going to determine the results and outcome and the accomplishments that you're going to produce. Yeah.
And your sense of fulfillment.
Yes.
So,
yes. So now another thing is, like you touched on it, like, is it validated sometimes, that people say, like, is it scientific? So some, they have this kind of a perception. Validation is like, there's this organization or this university, you go there and then go, here you are, this is my tool, and then they have this stamp, you go up, yes, this is validated. There's no such a thing. Yeah.
Yes.
So in order for you to validate any tool, like particularly a kind of questionnaire, so you follow certain processes, like methodical processes and everything, which, like, in great part we have done, and we still are refining the parts that we can. Like, it's not a kind of one-off project, and we get in, as I said, like, we got different people from different backgrounds, including psychology, different schools of philosophy, practical coaches, people of different ethnicities or minority groups, to actually see if they resonate with the questions, like if the questions are biased, or like the things that it could have been in my blindness. But and then, believe me, there were so many of them. So, and I'm happy that, like, we got others involved to support us in making it a better, more effective tool. And then by now, like, over 3,500 people, as you know, they have done their being profile from the time of commercialization. So we do have this validation from the users end as well, because, as you know, all of them, they have invested, they have paid the accredited practitioners to actually, and coaches, to work with them. So they're testifying that, like, they're voting us in.
Yes.
Even from a commercial perspective, they're voting us in, saying that yes, we find this quite valuable, and they're using it. And many organizations, as they're using it, and we have the case studies and everything. So therefore, so this validation thing is like, there's no stamp that someone can put on something at the end of the day.
But there is the method, there is the level of the amount of people that have done it, and also the continual refinements that we have continued to do to get to the point.
And in
where
some
we are
part,
today.
even like, we attempted to work with some academics. We do have some good academics, like number
in
of
our
academics
community.
our
Some of
community.
them will be watching this.
Yes. So we have some good number of the people we have in our core community. They are academics. And we do have good relationship with some universities, like we sponsored hackathons and But as you know, like, I have my criticism the way that academia is going on these days, in great part, but we said that we're not going to talk about that. But yeah, so
I would say let's wrap it up here.
Sure.
Understanding that there is so many more questions that could come, and that we invite you to keep pouring in and bringing to me, so that we can create more of these sessions. So for now, just thank you, Ashkan, for explaining, sharing with us all of this, and we hope you've got value out of this, and see you in the next one.
Thank you, Lucy, and thank you, everyone.